Let the noise of your day fall completely away. Let all the sounds of the active world grow distant and unimportant. We are beginning a quiet journey tonight, a slow, dark voyage to a place where time itself seems to have paused for more than a century. We are traveling back to the winter of 1900, to the remote, raw edges of the Atlantic Ocean, a place of stone and water known as the Flannan Isles. This is a place built for vigilance, a place that demands absolute routine. We are searching for the answer to a question, a historical secret that remains perfectly preserved in the cold, damp stone of a lonely lighthouse. A question that still stands, unanswered in the face of the eternal, gentle power of the sea. Our vessel, the Hesperus, cuts slowly through the heavy, dark water. The light of the mainland, the last flickering trace of civilization, faded hours ago. It is gone. We are surrounded now only by the endless, heavy darkness of the open sea. The past days were marked by a severe gale, a howling storm that delayed our travel and intensified the anxiety of our small crew. But now, the great storm has granted a momentary, fragile peace. The wind is low, the air is cold, heavy with moisture. We feel the continuous, rhythmic rise and fall of the ship beneath us, a smooth, repetitive motion that lulls the mind and slows the heart. It is a rocking that belongs only to the deep water, where all human urgency is forgotten. Finally, through the lingering mist and gloom, the island appears. Eilean Moor, the great isle. It is a mass of cold, heavy rock rising steeply from the depths. A desolate, strong and entirely empty place. And upon that rock, a magnificent structure stands, the Flannan Isles Lighthouse. A tower built for absolute, unwavering duty, a sentinel against the darkness. Our eyes, after so long in the void, search for the one thing that must be there. The thick, protective beam of light. The faithful, mechanical sweep that should be turning, turning, turning. A promise of safety. But the light is dark. The massive, silent lens at the top of the tower is still. It is asleep. It is blind. The powerful electric eye that should be sweeping the black waters is motionless, dead. Captain Harvey, watching from the deck, feels a coldness that has nothing to do with the winter air. The light is their only mission. The light is their only voice. The fact that it is dark is an absolute, profound failure of duty, or a sign of something much, much deeper. The small flagpole is also bare. The signal of life is not flying. The tower stands mute, dark, and completely motionless. This silence is wrong. The Hesperus attempts to break the oppressive silence. A warning rocket is fired, its sound quickly and completely swallowed by the vast, uncaring indifference of the ocean. The ship's whistle blasts, a loud, urgent call, but the tower makes no reply. There is no sign of movement behind the glass, no welcoming wave. The relief keeper, Joseph Moore, is lowered carefully into a small boat. His task is simple: to find the harbour and discover the reason for the silence. We hear the gentle, sloshing sound of the small boat reaching the rock, and then the slow, careful scrape of his boot on the cold, wet stone steps. He shouts the men's names, but the wind catches the words and scatters them into the eternal void. There is no echo, and there is no reply. The vastness has already begun to claim the answer. The silence is heavy, and we carry it with us as we step onto the lonely shore. We follow Joseph Moore as he steps across the threshold and into the lighthouse interior. The gate outside was unlocked, But the main door was merely unlatched, a simple, baffling breach of security. Inside, the environment changes instantly. We leave the cold, raw roar of the Atlantic behind for a heavy, unnatural warmth. The air is still, close, and carries the faint, familiar scent of lamp oil, old wood, and forgotten coal smoke. It is a domestic smell, a comforting scent, now rendered deeply unsettling by the silence that hangs in it. We are alone, yet we are surrounded by the immediate recent presence of the three men who inhabited this space. Our gaze is drawn to the center of the mess hall, the small shared table. Upon the table, a partially eaten meal remains, cold meat and potatoes, sitting heavy and still upon the porcelain plates. Did they stop in the middle of a sentence? Did they simply pause their meal, rise for a moment, and never return? The food is a silent monument to a daily routine that was snapped instantly, without a final intention or explanation. And then, the timepiece. The kitchen clock, mounted high on the wall, its pendulum is motionless. It is frozen in time. The mechanism that should measure their every solemn routine minute has gone quiet. What exact moment did the active world stop for the keepers? We don't know. We only know that the heart of the home, the measure of their time, has gone quiet forever. We ascend the circular stone stairs, our muffled steps echoing softly against the cold spiral of the stone. We reach the keeper's sleeping quarters. Here, the silence is compounded by contradiction. Two of the three simple beds are made perfectly, tucked tight with a rigid discipline born of the lonely service. But the third bed is rumpled, the coarse wool blankets thrown back, as if the keeper, perhaps William MacArthur, was pulled instantly and without care from his rest. We pause, focusing on the simple material, the rough weave of the blanket. Is this a sign of distress, or merely a man rising quickly in the night? We only know the space where a body rested is now cold, still, and profoundly empty. The quiet of the unmade bed is deeper than the quiet of the two that were carefully tidied. We move to the small desk where the official duties were recorded. The heavy official logbook is found open, resting on the table, a final, quiet witness. We do not yet read its entries, but we see the vast, empty space below the last line of ink. The logbook is a tool meant to record every hour, every change of the wind, every duty performed. But now it is a monument to the unrecorded time, the silent, baffling gap that stretches between the last entry and the terrible discovery. The room is still, the beds are cold, the food is untouched. The only life here is the cold wind that whistles softly outside the thick glass. The men who lived by perfect routine vanished without leaving a note, or a stain, or a final sound. The quiet is absolute. We leave the perplexing quiet of the domestic quarters now, descending the cold stone spiral staircase and moving back toward the heavy, brass-trimmed door. We return to the exterior, where the true nature of Eilean Moor is revealed. Outside, the air is cold, damp, and filled with the unending sound of the sea. Here, the history is not told through missing men, but through bent iron and scarred concrete. The silence of the abandoned interior contrasts sharply with the silent violence recorded on the stone walls of the tower itself. We move slowly toward the exposed landing on the western side of the island, the part most vulnerable to the relentless Atlantic. Here, the evidence of the recent terrible storm is undeniable. Iron railings, thick, solid barriers designed to withstand constant exposure, are found mangled and bent back, ripped from their concrete moorings. We pause to trace the cold, rough metal with our eyes. Metal that has been twisted as if it was soft wire, evidence of an impossible, colossal force. Beside the railing, a large, heavy supply box, meant to hold landing gear, has been torn completely away from the rock and vanished. It was an object of immense weight, now simply gone. The sea demanded it, and the sea took it. The most unsettling evidence of the storm's power is the height of the damage. The lighthouse tower itself rises hundreds of feet above the water. Yet, observers later found signs of water, sea spray, and physical impact at levels over 100 feet above the ordinary high water mark. Imagine a wall of water rising in the darkness, silent, enormous, higher than any building, higher than any defense. A cold, black hand reaching up the stone tower. The sea should not be able to reach this high, yet the scars on the stone are a quiet, permanent memory of its visit. We examine the remnants of a safety rope on the steps leading to the main platform. It is not frayed from years of use, but snapped, torn apart as if by a sudden immense tension. This damage suggests a struggle, not of men against one another, but of men against a swift, overwhelming force of nature. If they left the tower, they were battling this terrifying power immediately. We link the exterior violence back to the missing oilskins we observed in Chapter 2. Did one man, perhaps James Ducat, rush out to secure the gear, only to be swept away in a sudden surge? And did the second and third keepers rush out to help, unprepared, following the first man into the same watery void? The storm, though now quiet, has left behind its powerful, unsettling history. A cold, undeniable memory recorded in the torn iron and the scarred rock. A testament to a force that moves silently and takes everything without a sound. We return now to the small wooden desk in the mess hall where the logbook rests. This heavy, leather-bound volume was meant to be the unblinking eye of the station, a cold, factual record of weather, oil consumption, and duty changes. But within its pages, the final entries tell a story that goes beyond simple facts. They tell a story of eclipsed sanity and profound human fear. The pen, the quiet implement of routine, became a reluctant witness to terror. We lean in close, tracing the ink of the men's final writings, searching for the moment the routine began to break. We read the entries from the beginning of the storm, the days immediately preceding the vanishing. On December 12th, one of the assistants, Thomas Marshall, wrote of the severe gales. But then the language shifts, becoming personal, raw, and desperate. He wrote that they were shut up like rats. Pause and consider that phrase. Shut up like rats. It is a frantic, undignified admission of terror, one that has no place in the stiff official language of the Lighthouse service. It suggests a fear far greater than just the wind. Was it the feeling of being trapped? The sound of the ocean pressing in on all sides? The knowledge that no help could possibly reach them? We sit with the emotional weight of that one sentence, a brief confession of absolute helplessness. The unsettling mood deepens when we read the entry concerning the principal keeper, James Ducat. Ducat was the most experienced of the three, a man of absolute discipline, the anchor of the crew. Yet one entry notes that Ducat was crying. The leader of the crew, reduced to tears by something beyond the storm itself. Was it despair over the damage outside? Was it the unbearable psychological strain of the unending noise and isolation? The lighthouse structure, designed for comfort and safety, suddenly became a claustrophobic cage where the minds of disciplined men began to unravel under the pressure of the sea. And then we arrive at the last entry of all, dated December the 15th. It is the final sentence ever written by the keepers of Island Moor. After days of recording terror, confinement and tears, the last words are, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." It is a profound, quiet paradox. The storm had ended, the sea was calm. Peace had returned to the stone structure. Yet, between this final statement of serenity on December 15th and the discovery of the empty station on December 26th, the three men simply vanished. 11 days of silence, of eclipsed time, between the record of calm and the certainty of their disappearance. The final words in the logbook lie quiet and still on the page, the perfect opposite of the terrifying truth. We return to the silent, organized spaces of the lighthouse, the gear room and the personal quarters. When men disappear, we seek meaning in what they took with them, but in this case, the meaning lies in what they left behind. Lighthouse keepers are men defined by their tools and their strict gear. Their equipment is their life, their protection against the fury of the Atlantic. The items left behind become silent, heavy testimony against any idea of a planned escape. We observe the hooks, the shelves, and the small wooden drawers, counting the emptiness, counting the quiet presence of things that should have been used. 0U42, 0045, the unused safety gear. In the corner of the gear room, the safety life belts hang neatly in their appointed places. The emergency line, used for hauling supplies and, crucially, for saving lives, is perfectly coiled and ready. We pause, tracing the smooth, dry canvas of the belts with our eyes. They were never used. They never touched the rough, angry water. This speaks of a calamity so swift, so final, that there was no time for preparation, no time to retrieve the very tools designed for survival. The safety equipment is a profound symbol of the eclipsed logic of the event. They were gone before they could take the first necessary steps to save themselves. The rescue gear hangs still, waiting for men who had already been silently taken. We move to the personal effects left behind in the small sleeping chambers. Here, in a small wooden drawer, is the most baffling contradiction to any theory of a planned departure. The keeper's personal funds and wages were found untouched. Their coins and their small store of money rest still, exactly where they had been left. If these men had planned to abandon their posts, to leave the isolated tower for a new life, they would have certainly taken the small, quiet weight of their currency. The fact that the money remains, still and undisturbed, is a heavy, final vote against the theory of voluntary escape. They were not leaving. They were suddenly, instantaneously removed from their lives. One final telling object rests on a ledge near the light room, the large official pocket watch used to time the light's intricate rotation. It is the master clock of the tower. The watch is found on the stone ledge, and its glass is smashed. Its delicate mechanism is silent, its time broken. Was this the result of a moment of panic, a sudden, desperate movement? Did the watch fall from a trembling hand in the final dark confusion? This shattered glass is one of the few signs of physical violence in an otherwise silent scene. A tiny piece of broken routine left behind by men who had to hurry, who had to leave everything, including time itself. The silent inventory confirms the impossible. 3 men vanished completely, yet their world was left perfectly intact, prepared only for routine, never for abandonment. We pause now in the heart of the tower, letting the physical clues fade and focusing only on the air itself. We are investigating a history that is eclipsed not by water, but by silence. The true history of Eilean Mor is not only in the logbook entries or the bent railings. It is in the immense, oppressive weight of the quiet that defines this lonely job. A lighthouse keeper's life is a pact with isolation, a silent agreement to live with the steady, continuous presence of only 2 sounds: the wind and the ceaseless motion of the ocean. All the distractions of the world are filtered out by thick stone walls, leaving the mind alone with itself. These men were anchored by routine. The clock was their master, dictating when they must sleep, when they must eat, and when they must clean and trim the massive lamp. Every hour was accounted for, a necessity to keep the immense solitude from fracturing the mind. But isolation is a subtle predator. It can slowly turn the familiar into the threatening. The monotonous sound of the light's turning mechanism, the regular sweep of its own shadow across the floor. These things, meant to be comforting, can become a source of profound, quiet tension. The mind, left alone for too long, begins to invent company, or to focus intensely on small imperfections, small fears, until they loom larger than the ocean itself. The history of the Lighthouse service is filled with quiet, sad stories of men who could not withstand this pressure. Men who fell into the slow, steady current of mental collapse. Men whose minds were overwhelmed by the sheer, unyielding lack of human sound. We imagine the 3 keepers in this confined space. James Duckett, the rigid principal, Thomas Marshall, the stoic assistant, and William MacArthur, the 3rd man, known to have a quick temper. 3 distinct minds, sealed within a stone cylinder, watching a storm rage outside for days on end. The silence that followed the storm, the profound post-gale calm, may have been the most terrifying thing of all. A sudden, deep quiet that offered no distraction from the anxieties that had been building for days. We sit with the idea that the answer to the vanishing is not out in the water, but here, inside the stone walls. That the silence itself became a living thing, an intangible force that drove the men to some desperate final act. Did the oppressive weight of the solitude lead to an internal, quiet conflict? A desperate, silent break? Did the mind, unable to face another day of endless, quiet routine, simply choose to leave, stepping out into the unknown in a moment of catastrophic, irreversible clarity? The silence of the tower remains profound, absolute. It is a perfect, dark record of men who were consumed not by the roar of the ocean, but by the terrifying quiet of their own isolated thoughts. We have examined the physical evidence, the abandoned meal, the broken clock, the twisted iron. We have delved into the strained, fragile psychology of isolation. But the logical and the scientific often fail to explain a mystery this complete. To find another truth, we must turn away from the facts recorded in ink and listen instead to the quiet murmur of the old stories, the ancient histories that predate the stone tower itself. We must consider the beliefs of the people who lived nearest to this lonely spot for thousands of years. On the Flannan Isles, the sea is not merely water, it is a powerful, sentient entity, and the island itself is a sacred, strange place. 1102, Marm 1005, the ancient sanctity of Eilean Mor. Eilean Mor was long considered a forbidden or sacred isle. Before the lighthouse was built, the island held the ruins of a small 7th century chapel dedicated to Saint Flannan. Local law decreed that anyone visiting the island must observe certain quiet rituals upon landing. They had to turn around 3 times, offer a prayer, and absolutely refrain from speaking of anything common, vulgar, or ordinary. It was a place where only the holy or the profound could be spoken. We consider the 3 lighthouse keepers, men of the modern world, perhaps skeptical of old tales, but sealed on an island with a powerful ancient history. Did they observe the quiet rituals? Did they respect the silence demanded by the rock? Or did they speak careless, loud words into the great wind? The local Gaelic stories whisper of forces far older than any saint. They speak of a great serpent, a sea creature of immense dark power that lives in the deep waters surrounding the island. This creature, known in some traditions as the Ancorsa Mor, demands respect and demands sacrifice. The belief is that this creature is not malevolent, but simply ancient and hungry. Its movements are silent. Its purpose is slow. It takes what it desires and leaves no trace, returning the sea to its customary silence immediately afterward. This creature, the quiet embodiment of the dark, powerful Atlantic, provides a perfect, terrifying answer for the silent vanishing. A force that has been eclipsed by modern thought, but never truly left the deep. We sit with this idea that the 3 men were not taken by a storm or by a thief, but by an ancient hunger that had waited patiently for the lighthouse to be built upon its sacred ground. Perhaps the terrible fear recorded in the logbook was not fear of the wind, but the creeping, profound dread that they had angered the island itself, that they had failed to maintain the required silence. The ultimate price for this disrespect was to be drawn out, quietly, without a sound, to become the final, unspoken sacrifice to the ancient power of the island, leaving the stone tower and the turning light to continue its duty in perpetual, unsettling silence. The island is at peace now. It has taken what it was owed. We look out now from the lantern room, through the thick glass that protected the massive lens. We look at the ocean, a canvas so vast and so empty that it becomes the perfect hiding place for any secret. We have considered the silent power of the storm and the ancient hunger of the rock. Now we must consider the possibility that the solution to the vanishing did not come from nature, but from man. This is the ghost ship theory, the idea that the answer lies not in a wave that crashed upon the island, but in a vessel that sailed silently past it, an unscheduled, unwanted visitor in the deep, quiet dark. 1:12. Songs to 1:15. The call for help theory. Imagine the circumstances. The storm had been terrible, and damage had been done to the lighthouse landing. Perhaps a ship, also battling the severe gales, had been badly disabled and drifted close to the treacherous rocks of Flannan Moor. The keepers, despite their own fear and isolation, were professional mariners. They would have rushed out to the landing to offer aid, perhaps hearing the distress signals that we, on the relief ship Hesperus, never heard. One man, or all 3, may have been taken aboard that distressed ship, either as a quick rescue or against their will, to assist with repairs. A silent, desperate demand for help that pulled them away from their duty forever. The ship, once repaired, simply sailed on, leaving the light dark, and the 3 keepers lost to the endless, unrecorded expanse of the sea. But there is a darker possibility that the vastness of the sea permits the possibility of crime. The lighthouse keepers guarded valuable supplies, oil, equipment, and sometimes personal valuables. Could a passing ghost ship, a fishing vessel, or perhaps a predatory crew have landed on Isle Moor under the cover of the storm's aftermath? The keepers, finding intruders on their quiet island, may have been quickly and silently overpowered, their bodies disposed of in the deep water, leaving the tidy, empty rooms as a perfect cover-up. The vast ocean, having served its purpose as an infinite grave, returned to its continuous, monotonous silence. There were no witnesses, no flares, no cries for help to disturb the profound quiet of the remote island. The tragedy of the ghost ship theory is the sheer, unyielding lack of testimony. In the silence of the sea, anything can happen, and no one will ever know. We sit with the cold reality that a ship or even a smaller boat could have approached Isle Moor, interacted with the keepers, and vanished without leaving a single entry in any official logbook anywhere in the world. The deep water holds the secret of that vessel and the fate of those three men, a secret that remains eclipsed by the rolling, endless waves. The ocean provides a perfect dark shelter for all of history's quiet, unanswered violence. We have explored the realm of folklore and the possibility of human intrusion. Now, we turn back to the sea. But we search for a terror that is both natural and deeply unexpected. This is the rogue wave hypothesis, the most terrifying theory because it provides a complete answer that requires no warning, no struggle, and leaves behind a scene of perfect, baffling tranquility. The ocean, in its vast, ceaseless motion, occasionally produces something impossible. A wave that defies all expectations of size and power. These are the giants, often called the Three Sisters in maritime lore, monsters of the deep that rise without notice. Imagine the scene at Isle Moor on or around December 15th, just after the main gale had supposedly ended. The logbook claimed sea calm. The men may have descended to the lower landing to check the damage left by the earlier storm, to secure the railings, or to fetch a needed supply. Suddenly, without a change in the wind or a shift in the general swell, a single monolithic wall of water appears. It is not a crashing breaker. It is a steep, dark, solid column of energy. This wave, perhaps towering over 100 feet high, moves with a speed that gives no time for an alarm. It is the perfect, eclipsed disaster, a catastrophe so swift it is over before it can make a sound that travels beyond its immediate violence. The wave slams into the landing. The force is incomprehensible, enough to tear the iron railings from the stone, as we observed in Chapter 3, and to rip the heavy supply box clean away from the concrete. The three men, be they on the landing or just descending the steps, would have been overwhelmed instantly, pulled from the rock with the same silent, irresistible force that bent the iron. They would have been swept into the vast, dark water within seconds. The rogue wave would pass, the ocean would absorb the new movement, and the sea would immediately return to its customary, monotonous silence. This theory accounts for every baffling clue. The missing oilskins. They had no time to put them on. The undisturbed kitchen. They were taken in an instant. And the final log entry of sea calm. The general sea state was indeed calm, but they failed to record the single, catastrophic wave that ended their watch. The rogue wave is the sea's ultimate quiet weapon. It leaves no witnesses, no struggle, and no noise that registers above the ordinary sound of the surf. It simply takes the men and their secrets into the deep and then stands back, leaving the empty, silent tower to watch over the perfectly calm water. The mystery is over in the single, dark, crushing sweep of a giant wave. We have considered the sea and the myth. Now, we turn to the most tragic and quiet possibility of all, the conflict that can only bloom in absolute isolation. The Lighthouse Tower, for all its structural strength, was also a prison of stone. 3 men, James Ducat, the rigid principal, Thomas Marshall, the stoic assistant, and William MacArthur, the 3rd man, known for his quick temper, were sealed together for weeks at a time. Imagine the atmosphere in the small, close quarters during the height of the storm, as recorded in the logbook. Days of relentless, deafening wind, the fear, the sleep deprivation, the lack of escape. This pressure can turn small irritations into profound, destructive rages. 1:32, 1:35, the break in discipline. We revisit the clues, the rumpled bed, the unmade meal, the strange, contradictory log entries. These suggest a profound break in discipline, a failure of the iron rule that governed the keepers' lives. Was the conflict about a simple duty, an argument over the diminishing oil supply? Or was it a clash of personalities, magnified tenfold by the inescapable silence? We imagine the heavy quiet of the argument, men speaking in low, desperate tones in the confines of the spiral staircase, trying not to disturb the machinery of the great lamp. But the pressure builds, the words sharpen, until the tension is so thick it is palpable. The great tragedy of the lighthouse vanishing is the utter lack of sound, the absence of blood or evidence of a protracted fight. If violence occurred, it would have been swift, brutal, and utterly silent, swallowed by the roar of the wind or the sheer remoteness of the location. Imagine the moment the discipline finally fractured. A quick, desperate push, a sudden blow, and the sound of a body collapsing onto the cold stone floor. This theory leaves one survivor, the last man standing, suddenly alone with his terrifying secret in the heart of the empty tower. He is surrounded by the ghosts of his crew and the absolute quiet of his guilt. The final keeper, the silent survivor, faces an impossible choice. He cannot remain, for his deed is witnessed by the cold walls and the empty logbook. He cannot confess, for the nearest human being is hours away across the turbulent sea. His only option is a silent, immediate departure. He would have left the kitchen table set, abandoned his personal money, and walked out into the cold mist, taking one set of oilskins for his journey into the unknown. He's not rescued. He's not swept away. He simply walks away from the silent scene of his terrible deed, choosing the lonely, endless expanse of the ocean as his final dark solitude. He leaves the light dark. The clock stopped, and the question permanently unanswered. The eclipsed testimony of the final survivor is the most haunting silence of all. We leave the grim speculation of the past now and jump forward across the decades, across the century, to the present moment. The lighthouse at Eilean Moor still stands, unwavering, against the constant onslaught of the Atlantic. The stone is older, the iron railings are new replacements, but the tower's mission is unchanged. It is still a sentinel, a pillar of light and warning in the dark. The great difference now is that the tower is utterly alone. In 1998, the lighthouse was fully automated. The human element, the cause of all the fear, the source of the mystery, and the subject of all the sorrow, was finally removed. We pause on the moment the last keeper locked the door behind him. He was not one of the missing men, but a modern worker who simply had to ensure the electronics were running before he left for the final time. This was the final quiet eclipse of human presence. The silence of the tower became perfect. The intricate mechanical lamp no longer needs a hand to trim its wick or a man to wind its clockwork. It now runs on a steady, indifferent current. Imagine that mechanical, uninterrupted watch. The light turns now, not by the sweat and diligence of 3 men, but by the relentless, passionless certainty of electricity. The whirring of the gears is the only sound in the lantern room, a monotonous, continuous sound that signals the light is on and the mystery is forever closed. For decades following the vanishing, new keepers had to serve their duty on Flannan Moor. Imagine their first night in the tower, sleeping in the same cold, quiet quarters, knowing the indelible history contained within the walls. They maintained the routine. They polished the brass. They trimmed the wick, all while living with the heavy, unshakable knowledge that 3 men had simply ceased to exist within those very stones. They were keepers of the light, but also keepers of the silence. They felt the perpetual solitude of the place, magnified by the memory of the missing men. Their own routine became an act of profound, quiet defiance against the chaos that the tower had witnessed. The lighthouse today stands as a monument to the eclipsed time, the 11 days between the logbook's last entry and the discovery. It continues its duty, silently, perfectly, without human intervention. The wind still howls, the waves still crash, and the light still sweeps the darkness. But no human voice is there to record it. The secrets of the rogue wave, the silent madness, and the ancient hunger are perfectly safe, held forever by the stone of the tower and the deep, dark vastness of the sea. The mystery has achieved a final, perfect rest. And we too can now accept the silence of the unknown and prepare for our own deep, uninterrupted sleep. We have reached the end of our dark journey. We have examined the abandoned meal, the broken watch, the terrified entries in the logbook. We have considered the madness of isolation and the silent, terrifying power of the rogue wave. But as our journey ends, the great mystery of Flannan Moor remains exactly where it started, unanswered. The sea has absorbed the facts, the fear, and the final moments of 3 men, and it has kept them all perfectly safe within its vast, dark silence. The final resolution we crave, the simple, satisfying truth, has been deliberately withheld by history. This is the final, quiet truth of this eclipsed history. We must accept the permanent presence of the unknown. We must let go of the need for an answer, just as the island lets go of the noise of the world. Imagine the wind outside the thick stone walls. It whispers past the lantern room, knowing the secrets of the fog, the secrets of the waves, and the secrets of the keeper's last moments. But the wind does not tell. It simply sighs and moves on, indifferent to our human need for closure. The stone of the tower, cold, strong, and enduring, stands as the ultimate silent witness. It has guarded the mystery for over a century, and it will guard it forever. The answer is not lost. It is simply kept, held in a silence that is deeper and more profound than any sleep. We focus now on the most peaceful thought. The mystery is over. The search has ended. The 3 keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and MacArthur, have found their final rest in the enormous, quiet expanse of the Atlantic. They are no longer isolated. They are no longer bound by the rigid demands of the clock or the fear of the storm. They are part of the deep, continuous motion of the ocean, part of the long, slow, quiet history of the earth. We let their unanswered question become a peaceful, low hum in the back of our minds. A gentle reminder that some things are meant to remain untouched and quiet. You too can now let go of the day's questions. You can let go of the noise, the pressure, and the need for a final, perfect answer. Close the chapter on your own day. Surrender your thoughts to the gentle, rhythmic sound of the dark water. The sound that is the same today as it was on Eilean Moor over a century ago. May your own rest be as deep and continuous as the vast, silent ocean. May your sleep be as quiet and undisturbed as the cold, ancient stone of the lighthouse. Drift now. Drift peacefully into the darkness. The silence is complete. The mystery is over for tonight.